Hi, this is Steve Queen. Welcome to the LiveWick YouTube channel. This is part one of a series on knowing and living the will of God. And it may seem obvious to you if you're watching this when we talk about the value of the will of God. You probably wouldn't be watching this if you didn't already care about the will of God, about knowing and living the will of God for you, just like I do for me. But the bottom line is, if we're Jesus followers, we started being Jesus followers by caring what the will of God is. Maybe about knowing something was out of sorts with us, and the darkness in us was confronted by the light of Christ, and we realized He had a will for us that was better than what we were doing on our own. So you probably already have an understanding of how important the will of God is, but knowing it and carrying it out are crucial. And not just knowing it in the academic sense, but knowing it for the purpose of living it out. Also, when we live the will of God, blessings come to us out of living the will of God. And when we live the will of God, Christ is able to live His life in us and through us to help other people. So knowing and living the will of God really is at the very center of life in Christ. Now, this will be shorter than previous videos have been. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to ask you to do something that I believe will be very helpful, and it'll be helpful as we go through this series. So what I'd like you to do right now is stop and get ready to write down things that you know, things that you already know of the will of God. So if you need to, go ahead and pause this and get ready to type or get ready to write. Okay, I'm assuming that you're ready to write. So here's what I would like you to write down, please. This will be very helpful as we go through this. Write at least 5 things you absolutely know are the will of God for you. 5 things, at least 5, that you know are the will of God for you. Absolutely, without question. The second thing is I'd like you to write down at least 3 things that you're pretty sure are the will of God for you. You don't absolutely know, but you're pretty sure that's the will of God for you. Third thing, write down 1 thing that you used to believe was God's will for you, but now you don't think it's God's will for you. In other words, your mind has changed. Your view of that has changed. Not that your circumstances changed. So if you believed it was God's will for you to get a goldfish and the goldfish died, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is something that you used to believe was the will of God for you, but now you don't believe that's the will of God for you anymore, where your mind has changed. And the reason for that will become apparent later. So I encourage you to really embrace where we're going to head, resolve that you're willing to have a refresher on some things that I'm sure will be familiar to you already, because if you've been walking with the Lord any length of time, you've asked Him and you've wanted to know what His will is, and then you've wanted to carry that out. So we're going to get into some of the nooks and crannies. Some of the things we'll talk about will be pretty obvious. Other things may not be so obvious. But it's going to be quite a journey. And I believe it needs to start with the things that I already mentioned to you. So please go ahead and write those things down and save those, because we'll be referring to some of those as we go through this. But that's it. This is probably a record for the shortest video I've ever done. But it is part one of a series I'm really looking forward to going through with you on knowing and living the will of God. God bless you, and we'll see you in part 2.